While the landscape of wrestling games has changed as of late with last year's release of AEW Fight Forever, it wasn't the revolution we hoped it would be. 2K apparently expected the same thing, because this year their effort has turned out to be noticeably bigger. While not necessarily an overhaul in any way, which comes to the surprise of literally nobody, this year it's more of a refinement with much requested additions. It's been out for 2 months already, so if you wanted it, you probably already bought it. If you haven't and are on the fence whether or not to give this year's edition a try and want a short review, here it is. If you like the previous 2 games, you'll definitely like what's on offer here. If you flat out hated the direction they took since 2K22, expect to keep fueling that hate. If, however, you had your doubts, allow me to dive deeper into everything this game has to offer, what it does right, and what it regrettably does wrong. Again.
Terrible. Get to the showers. Never come back here again.
As per usual, the graphics are a mixed bag. Arenas look great, but the crowd remains the same, and at times don't even pay attention to anything that happens on the ramp. Also, the NXT arena is way too big, as the actual arena only has 5 rows of LED crowds behind them. The small arena on TV with a smaller crowd gives it a very intimate and small feeling, which in the game is severely lacking. 2K Visual Concepts would know this if they actually watched the product. The models on the other hand for the most part look great, some look terrific, while others such as Logan Paul and the cover star Cody Rhodes look subpar. I do like how they updated Andre's model, which was long overdue. It's not perfect, but looks leagues better than whatever the past 2 years was. And show my boy Brutus some respect, man. His crappy model from last year hasn't seen any update. They did, however, update some characters like The Rock in the recent patch, so there is hope. While outfits can be tricky to update near release, wrestlers like Karrion Kross aren't even updated at all from last year's release. Seriously, what's with the hair? Hair overall is hit and miss again, but I've given up on that. It looks decent enough, I guess. Although Gunther could have used an update. But hey, patches can fix everything, right? Like I said in my previous review of 2K23, as predicted, there are still no AR visuals, which should actually be easier to implement in a game than in real TV programming. But this way the next game will have a huge presentational leap. Wait, I just read they plan to turn down the AR visuals on TV. Way to go 2K, dodged another bullet. Speaking of entrances, it would be nice to see the crowd reaching out during entrances or try to take selfies. Crowd reactions and interactions are a huge part of the experience, and I would like to see that implemented one day. The crowd is livelier when it comes to audio during matches, so that's a plus. It still doesn't feel dynamic in a way that there's an ebb and flow, with the crowd cheering for the good guy while they're down, but at this point we'll just have to settle with what's there. The same applies to commentary. Byron hasn't done commentary in years, well, apart from filling in for Booker T for a few weeks on NXT, but he's still on the team. No Wade Barrett, no Booker T, no Vic Joseph. I understand different commentary teams is a lot of work, but in all honesty, we're paying for a realistic depiction of the product, so I expect the presentation to reflect that, especially since the commentary is a major part of the experience. I mean, seeing Trick Williams' intro without Booker T doing the hype work is downright jarring.
What? Yeah. I like it. Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah,
man. Back in the day, they just replaced Taz with JBL and have him record all of his voice lines alongside new ones. Simple fix, but effective. The voice lines themselves are more of the same, with obviously some new ones added, and decent in the delivery.
Got their opponent set up.
Drop kick to the back. Never saw it coming. She's forced onto the defensive now.
Yes, Coral proving she does not care one bit about her opponent's feelings or well-being.
I honestly can't believe we just saw a human being tossed like that.
Just disrespectful.
I don't know if there's any ounce of professionalism in an attack like that. Made her pay for her mistake.
Back to the crowd. I'm missing some crowd interactions on NXT during these entrances, which is no surprise since, you know, NXT. But no whoop that trick chant, no barking during Braun's intro, or doing the hand gestures during Tony D's entrance. On the main roster side of things, I appreciate the attempt at Jay's crowd animations. But now it looks like it was animated like the widest rhythmless crowd imaginable. Shinsuke's crowd sing-along is still as horrible as it was for the past 6 years. Yeah, I hold grudges. So when it comes to presentation, all in all, it's more refined, but noticeably lacking in some aspects. What isn't refined are the overall ratings of the stars on screen, and by God, has 2K cemented their image of not watching the product. This year they're even worse than the years prior. Prime Kurt Angle, an 89. Are you serious? The future destroyer of all, Braun Breaker, an 80? As was mentioned before, and as is tradition with 2K, NXT is once again being treated as the proverbial red-headed stepchild, getting no love or respect whatsoever. Channing Stacks Lorenzo is a 69, even though he was one of the NXT Tag Team Champions for 6 months. Same for Trick Williams, who just main evented 2 NXT PLEs in a row. One of the most dominant champions in NXT history, Ilya Dragunov, has an 81. Unfathomable. Oh, and he's a cruiserweight for some reason. And Isla Dawn is apparently a heavyweight. Nice going, 2K. The rest is all hit and miss as well. They're almost all BS. You can of course change all of them if you want to, but I'd like some extra effort in this department. More on that later. Shitty overalls aside, let's see what the gameplay has to offer this year. The good news is, for those of you that have enjoyed playing rock, paper, scissors during the entire match, the breaker system is back. So the random guess game that is the main way of countering a combo remains unchanged. If you want to be the best, you're once again going to have to rely on luck.
Luck is for losers.
Correct button prompts are still nowhere to be seen.
So here's to ya.
This has probably been my main complaint in the past 2 games, and while not surprised to see it return, I am disappointed they didn't at least try to somewhat please the naysayers like myself. So besides the first major disappointment, what else can be said on the in-ring action?
There's Gunther with a counter.
Oh, you can't do that.
Well, the matches play out the exact same, with everything working a little smoother this year around. But, and this is the biggest but of the year, 2K has finally added in something that, while present in games made 2 decades ago, changes the game in a tremendous manner. A fun factor.
Is what's needed right about now.
And back into the ring she goes. Boom! Right on target. She's showing signs of slowing now.
Yes, for extreme.
That's gotta hurt. It's gotta hurt. Hurt. Because.
Yes, they brought back the fun, in a simple yet effective manner. You can finally throw objects again. I can go on how they should have added this 8 years ago, but let's focus on the fact that it has been added now and how it changes the way you experience the game. The simple act of throwing objects improves the fun factor tenfold. It was one of the most fun things to do in AEW Fight Forever, and that apparently hasn't gone unnoticed. Especially with friends, this is a great way to cause chaos and hilarious situations. It is arguably the biggest addition this year. And while not novel in any way, it enhances the experience in a profound manner. While not as big of an improvement, another addition is the mid-match brawl mechanic. During a match, a situation can arise where two wrestlers take turns in a minigame to chop each other's chest to establish dominance, with the first to lose 2 times take the bump to end it. To the dinosaurs among you, myself included, this will remind you of one of the start match minigames in the first SmackDown vs. Raw games on the PS2. It's a fun addition, but like the blood in the past 2 games, this mechanic is almost guaranteed to show up every match, which diminishes its impact and becomes an annoyance after having seen it for a few times. The blood does look better this year, and stays on the mat for a little while. Sometimes a chopping minigame ends up in a brawl, where you have to mash the strike button, and it's way more fun than the actual chopping game that precedes it. If only the crowd agreed with me. By the way, it would appear they've actually seen my suggestion from my lambasting first video. Now, if you don't like the extra effort, which we know you don't, add an ultimate finisher option that costs 2 finishers, which is harder to kick out. That could be the Avalanche Attitude Adjustment, the Roman Reigns Wake Up Spear, the Undertaker's Jumping Tombstone, Ricochet's 630, his main finish is a shooting star now. Again, you don't have to give them this move, it's okay to leave it blank if they don't do it on TV or pay-per-view. Instead of Ultimate, they call it a Super Finisher, and instead of 2, it costs 3 finisher slots. But hey, I'm pleased they finally added this feature. And no, of course they didn't watch my video. I'm not even a blip on their radar. But you can set any move as a super finisher, so that solves a lot of problems I had. Finding a good finisher is something I'll return to later on. Let's keep this positivity train rolling first.
Because
This year also finally marks the return of the special referee match, after being absent for nearly a decade. To my and everyone's surprise, they introduced a few mechanics that are very welcome. The referee has multiple options to play around with besides upholding the law and demonstrating impeccable mat skills. Removing weapons from the ring, putting back removed turnbuckle pads, eject managers, give warnings, there's plenty to do.
Going for an early pin.
Come on, the rope is like a mile away. Just call it fair.
And you'll have to, because in the upper left there's a bar that tells you what needs to be done to keep it out of the red.
Just how dominant he can be.
It all comes natural to him.
The referee isn't fooling anyone with that slow count.
Yeah, I don't think referee is going to make it on their resume after that pin.
Wait, what the heck's going on here?
I mean, what is going on here? Guest referees aren't supposed to get involved.
Kidding me? Penny predicament. Kicks out.
And that is how the count should be. This ref is taking the job seriously.
You can't accuse our guest referee of going into business for himself after that fair count.
And you'll get replaced by a CPU ref if you let things go out of control for too long. But if upholding the law is not what you signed up for, you can switch to wrestler mode to have all the controls switch to regular play mode. Gotta say, they did a great job with the mode this year. But, there's always a but, 2K wouldn't be 2K if there weren't some big limitations. As expected, Special Ref is only available in 1v1 matches. And I mean 1v1 specifically. Not 1v1 in a cage, Extreme Rules, or a 6-man Hell in a Cell or Elimination Chamber, anything. Obviously keeping things to be updated in the future. But hey, I'm just relieved they finally added it this year in any form. Also disappointed you cannot turn off the ref replacement meter, as you of course want to have some long chaotic matches with your friends from time to time like the days of old. Maybe next year. Another new match type is the ambulance match. It's a rather simple match.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And it doesn't have to be complicated, by the way. The object is to soften up your opponent and throw them in the back and closing the door via a button bashing minigame. It's simple, but enjoyable. You can also climb on top of the vehicle, throw and dive off of it, and perform moves on top. I would have liked to see a few dents in the roof, or perform a super finisher and throw them completely through it, comfortably winning the match. Another addition is the casket match, and it works in the same way. While not riveting in any way, as they aren't really that amazing on TV, it's a nice way to have some variety.
An unbelievable ending and frightening look at a human being's demise.
Alright, time to get negative for a second. There's still a lot of jank in the game, but that was to be expected. The Irish whip distance is still the same, but the AI is a little less throwy, so that alleviates the problem a bit. They still counter the final move before getting stunned, almost every time, and countering finishers is almost a guarantee. I know you can adjust that in the settings, but that feels like cheating. The AI is also not objective focused, as in a 6-man Money in the Bank match. Don't expect the AI to grab a ladder and climb it. This might just be in CPU only matches, but that doesn't negate the problem these games are having for many years. The Backstage Brawl match now has a few new additions, these being breakable windows, a 2-person only elevator, and the option to have 4 wrestlers duke it out in these more interactive but still identical areas from the last 2 games. And if you're thinking, oh hell yeah, let's get it on boys, I'ma have to stop you right there. It's still only 1v1. Why, you ask? The answer is simple. They can't figure out how to have 4 wrestlers on every corner of the map. Like in the past 2 games, you switch to a split screen version if you get too far apart. Since they can't do a 4-way split screen, since a 2-player split already reduces the frame rate to 30 FPS on consoles, they just kept it the way it is whilst adding 2 CPUs. I don't know why they can't just zoom all the way out. I mean, the map is not that big, or even that visually impressive. Or just limit movement with invisible barriers if they're too far apart. Other than these annoyances, the match is still not worth playing in singles competition. Which it basically is. Maybe next year. Oh, and after throwing them down into the abyss onto the bat signal, it still takes less time for them to get back up than it is for the other guy to climb down.
And now it looks like they're done.
Done for now, but I have a feeling this isn't over, Cole.
All the other matches remain unchanged as far as I know, which is disappointing, but again, not entirely unexpected. Elimination Chamber, Hell in a Cell and Steel Cage matches are again identical to the previous years, and War Games remains untouched from last year. Grabbing weapons and ladders is slightly easier, but having the buttons for getting out of the ring and picking up said weapons is still a bit cumbersome, especially when the objects are near or under the rope. Your best bet is still to get out of the ring and run the objects further in, if that makes any sense. All in all, if you put aside playing with friends, which is the best way to experience the game, or having matches without weapons to be thrown, the gameplay is nearly identical to last year's offering. You can hit multiple people when diving off stuff. Nice touch for sure. Online I've heard that submissions were broken as well. I haven't noticed this myself, because outside of finishers, I rarely use them, as there is little incentive to. But I did notice the casket and ambulance button bash mechanics seemed ridiculously hard, even after multiple finishers. It was fine last year though, so no clue why they changed it. Oh, and one more annoyance that wasn't an issue last year. The CPU ref count is ridiculously slow. This was an issue in 2K22, and they fixed that before launch, but for some reason, it's back now. Weird. Also, they now added the ramp camera, which is perfect for the Royal Rumble match, in theory. I personally thought the camera could have been a lot closer, like the exact same as the regular one, only turned 90 degrees. It also has less camera cuts to show off the moves, so apart from the Royal Rumble, I barely use it. Even for the Royal Rumble it's not very useful, as no wrestler has a specific entrance animation like they used to in the old games. This is all extra effort, and the crowd view completely removed that responsibility. Sorry 2K, I guess you better get to work. So what other modes have received some updates? Well, Universe mode is by and large the same as last year, save for some well-needed fine-tuning. There aren't as many bugs.
This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I believe so, Byron. I've been waiting for this for a long, long time.
Oh, this superstar's in no condition to compete.
Not at all.
What the hell?
And now he wants in, and he's gonna get it.
And here we go, and the fight's underway.
These two
Unloading on each other.
This thing is broken down in a hurry.
Well, they weren't
Whoa.
That's not good. Obviously some miscommunication somewhere along the line.
Looks like this super...
Cocky and confident, but listening to the other superstar already talk trash.
You can just tell how much disdain is between both these competitors.
Enough flapping your gums.
Oh.
Start time to throw hands.
Match hasn't even started. Official trying to gain control.
Yeah, good luck with that.
We're going to need more than one referee out here for this.
Someone's got to get control of this situation. Come on, ref.
The interface and menus are a bit more streamlined, and there are a few more cutscenes.
Mora thought he had him, thought he had this match all wrapped up. For the win! 2.
Hold the phone.
At this point, I'm not really sure what they can do to overhaul or make it more interesting, but I can't seem to find any enjoyment in this mode anymore. Bringing back promos would be nice, terribly written as they may be. It also doesn't help you can't create PLEs on Saturdays, which is a bit lazy if you ask me, especially since these have been a thing for a few years now. So if you wanted to do a two-nighter, you'll be sorely disappointed. It's also disappointing that you can't start a universe file from an empty slate. You'll have to manually remove all the shows and insert new ones. That isn't so hard and time consuming to do. The problem lies in the fact that all the rivalries and enemies and all the data remain, which can lead to some weird run-ins. A start from scratch option would be nice. Maybe next year.
Not bloody likely.
Now that I think about it, you know what would be a really nice idea? Have Create a Story back again. This was a great mode from 2 generations ago where you could, shocker, create your own stories, complete with dialogue and zany situations. Besides the fact that it would be great seeing it again, what would also be great is if you could download these stories and upload them into Universe mode. This would make the mode literally be supported by the universe. Have people create their own shitty promos, let them choose between cutscenes and match types, tying it all together over a preset amount of weeks. Honestly, it could be just like the old Here Comes the Pain days. No voice acting needed, let our imagination do the work. You know the community is creative as hell, and this could just be the boost this mode needs to last for many years. 2K26, make it happen. Probably 2K27, but hey, a man can dream.
Seriously?
Seriously.
What a shame.
Showcase mode is all about 40 years of WrestleMania, and this time it's 2K's attempt at reliving the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. Before any of you rush towards the comment section, 2K had nothing to do with 2K14 apart from slapping their logo on the box, and it was developed by Ukes. So this is their first time. Anyway, instead of focusing on one wrestler or focusing on the opponents of one wrestler like last year, this time around we get to experience all different superstars on screen. Despite celebrating 40 years of WrestleMania, we only have 21 matches on offer, with some even occurring on the same event. With the admittedly insane amount of wrestlers in the game, you'd think we'd at least have one match from each year. The matches we do get are nicely done at least. The pretentiously called slingshot tech is once again present this year, which basically means the game switches to video to load in the next cutscene. It's effective in its execution, but coloring and video effects don't really match between the two. It does look nice at times, admittedly. This year we still don't have any commentary, but is instead occasionally narrated by Corey Graves. I'd still prefer the commentary team narrate the match between the video segments, but it is what it is. The matches themselves play out in the same way we're used to by now. Follow the instructions on screen to progress to the next cutscene. Sometimes it boils down to doing a certain amount of damage, or walk to an area outside of the ring and pressing the punch button. Other times you're asked to do multiple signatures or finishers, which takes a long time to do, and the lack of commentary during that time makes it feel even longer. Van Hellington tip: don't do a signature or finisher if the opponent is not stunned, for I guarantee they will counter it. I liked how the instructions are beneath the objective this time around, so no more going into a menu to see how the hell you're supposed to pull some of those things off. Minor gripe: sometimes the instructions are a bit lengthy, so another Van Hellington tip: knock the opponent down before reading. It'll save you a lot of annoyance. Some of the objectives and the incessant countering will make up for that, trust me. Even though it is an okay distraction, like many years ago, this too has become a bit tedious and has lost its appeal somewhat. I like unlocking the wrestlers, managers and arenas though. Too bad you can only play as Brock in this mode, but can't unlock him. But I'll leave that aside for this review.
Able to kick out of the F5 when it certainly seemed to many that he was finished. Undertaker was struggling in there with Brock, but wasn't out yet. Surely he'd be able to get back into this match and continue his WrestleMania domination?
Create a Superstar has received little improvement, but in all honesty, there was little that needed to be changed. Regrettably, there are still only 2 attires, but I guess you can copy the character to circumvent this issue. Still, 1 or 2 more would have been nice. You can still adjust the existing wrestlers, and I would have liked to see the option to change their hairstyles or beards, but that would probably mean more bugs like wrestlers showing up bald, so I get that, I guess. The create an entrance is still the same as well, and like I said previously, this year we still lack the option to have augmented visual effects like those seen on programming. This is again a huge letdown, as they add to the experience seen on TV. But this way they're not forced to create generic ones for the created wrestlers. Maybe next year.
Not bloody likely.
Also, some friends of mine have experienced multiple issues with random layers appearing on created Titantrons, or pyros created Titantrons and lighting not working properly. Also, your timing on the pyros and animations may be perfectly aligned in the editor. Once you're in a match in a different arena, it's all off because of the different camera shots and impromptu load times. I stopped working on entrances until they've done it right because of all this. Luckily, you can still do a quick creation. Besides these obvious limitations, it's still an extensive creation shed that I would like to see expanded in future games. This is especially apparent in the Create a Show mode, which is still as ancient as it was 5 years ago. They still use the same assets and they still don't match with each other. Create an arena is still cumbersome with certain elements being hard to find, but once you figure it out, you can create some nice looking setups. Back to creating a superstar, the movesets, and specifically, or actually only, the signatures and finishers are expanded.
While we're at it, 2K, just use this multiple finisher system. It will make it easier to give a more accurate moveset. Walter, for instance, or Gunther, whatever. Instead of demoting his regular powerbomb to a signature, make it the default front finish. Throw the avalanche powerbomb in the turnbuckle position, and the splash in the diving position. Voila! Correct moveset.
You would almost think they actually watched my video, because we finally have the option to choose up to 5 different moves. In the finishers, you can change one finisher from every position as a super finisher. I've been wanting this forever, and it's nice to finally see it happen after nearly 2 decades. Choosing a finisher is still as cumbersome as it always has been though, as scrolling through over 1,000 moves is quite tedious. Having categories would go a long way, like they used to have in the past. Categories like head, slam, bombs, attacks, suplexes, throws, submissions would be a lot quicker to find a move that fits your character. Adding extra finisher slots is great, but there is still room left for improvement. So you finally created your ultimate wrestler. Now it's time to import them in My Rise mode. 2 new stories are available this year again, continuing the trend of having a male and female wrestler adventure. On the male side of things, you're William Regal's golden boy, and are almost immediately the Universal Champion, because Roman has chosen Hollywood and vacated his title. Fun premise for sure, but seeing the same title match intro every time gets tedious as hell. Speaking of hell, early on, it's like the 3rd match, no worries for any spoilers. But you get to face Kane. As a huge Canaanite, this warmed my heart to see him again. Anyway, most matches have the same mechanics seen in Showcase mode, where you have certain objectives to complete. Some matches literally had the intros, title match sequence, only for you to press one button to end the match.
That's right. By getting the title to the right.
Rhodes and the Dark Horse jockeying for position here.
Stop! Stop the damn match!
What is Miz doing out here?
I said, stop this unsanctioned match. That's right, unsanctioned.
I honestly don't know if it was trolling the player or they really just don't have a clue. But regardless, there are some nice and entertaining stories with some nice cutscenes. Don't expect anything mind-blowing, or as Roman likes to call it,
Cinema.
Speaking of Roman, people were hyped about the story advertising and lauded the one line Roman said in the trailer.
You're only standing there because of me. You're just a tenant. I'm the landlord. The landlord is back, and rent is due.
It sounded so familiar. And then I realized.
See, I'm the landlord, and rent's due, you son of a.
Nice try, 2K. Well, at least they took it from their own product, I guess. Between the matches and stories, there's the hub from previous years, where you can have extra matches to boost your stats, or unlock a variety of Create a Superstar attire parts, arenas, or My Faction cards. So to get a leg up for that mode, I advise you to do My Rise before that. More on that mode later. The voice acting is hit and miss, but better overall. Apart from some uber cringe moments.
Miz asked me to come to SmackDown. He made an additional proposition.
Let me guess.
The WWE Universal Champion and the World Heavyweight Champion in a tag team match for the first time ever! And it's gonna be awesome!
I still don't like the singular voice for your character and would prefer the option to have a filter over it to match the character at least. Choosing an attire for the backstage and interview segments would be nice as well. The lip syncing in these hub areas is perhaps even worse than it was last year. It's remarkably well done during some cutscenes, but you're immediately pulled out of the experience once no important conversations are being told.
SummerSlam. Roman Reigns shocked the world and surrendered his title.
The head of the table said that he's been beating up Cody for years now, and he has nothing more to prove. Now he's taking a sabbatical in Hollywood to show his cousin, The Rock, that he will be a bigger superstar there, too.
With SummerSlam in disarray and the draft set to begin the night after, Triple H called for a one-night WWE Universal title tournament with selections from the GMs of both Raw and SmackDown.
Miz is still looking for my co-host. How are you going to judge before we even start?
Because this is plagiarism. I've spent years building this show and brand, and you just step in and rip it off? You and me are gonna have to sort this out.
Are you really going to pretend you don't remember how you refused to book me in TBD?
Hey, I hear you're going after the Bloodline after what they did to you in Regal.
I am. They're gonna get what...
Nobody knows the Bloodline better than I do.
What also pulls me out of the experience, and this is starting to get a little personal, is the 2K created characters that I'm sure they think are fan favorites, but no one would miss. Slade makes a return. You know, the United States champion from last year.
Sorry, what was your name again?
Like you don't know the name Slade. I've been in WWE for 11 years, with a name the powers that be are terrified of.
He had to remind me too, because I completely forgot all about him. And that's because I chose to. The 2K-verse is not a thing. Stop trying to make it one. Keep them on the indie side of things, and not act like they've been a WWE staple for years.
It's weak. No one's gonna buy it, and you shouldn't be selling it.
Also, the Undisputed story spans multiple years, although the amount of matches feels like it might have been 6 months. I get it with the story they're trying to tell, but still. The Unleashed story is the indie story focused on the female side of things. This too is a fun story that at times really gets out there with some crazy shenanigans that you might have seen in the trailer. I won't spoil anything here either, but I suggest you try it as well. Just be wary that the first match has one of those annoying objectives that will test your patience. Throwing someone through a burning table has never been so infuriating. Instead of trying to do it with the opponent in a stunned state, I try to do it regularly. Big mistake, because even on normal the CPU countered at least 12 times before I could finally pull it off. Luckily, the objectives usually aren't as life-shortening throughout the rest of the story. Anyway, the My Rise mode adheres to a formula they've been doing for a few years now. And while fun to play through, it does start to feel a bit samey. There are 1 or 2 choices that really have no real consequence and act more like a detour, and the overall production value is very hit and miss. While the entrances and gameplay have that current gen look to them at times, in My Rise, everything looks and feels noticeably last gen, and especially the 2K NPCs feel like they were pulled from the 360 era. I'd like to see the presentation have a big upgrade next year, but I'll keep my expectations in check.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Now if all these stories and booking decisions make 0 sense to you, and you're convinced you can do better, you can put those aspirations to the test by playing this year's GM mode. While last year's attempt was a hell of a lot better than the year prior, and was even thoroughly enjoyable, I did have a few problems with it. Some things are fixed, like having tag team rivalries, but others like not being able to do 6 or 8 man matches are still there. No Elimination Chamber or 6-man Hell in a Cell matches are a shame. Not having stables in any way is also disappointing. Getting the Judgment Day or Bloodline complete on your roster doesn't do anything. You can manually do run-ins, but it's still something that needs to be incorporated in some way. It would be a cool extra challenge if stablemates interfere with certain matches or attack crew members like cameramen, referees, security, or even Michael Cole, and you have to suspend them for a few weeks, or perhaps pay a fine for them or bail them out of jail so they can still be on the match card. You can do trades this year though, complete with counter offerings, so that's a nice plus. What's also been a nice addition is the way you can upgrade your venues, crews, marketing and special effects permanently, so you don't have to worry about needing the money to pay for those every week. I'm still not a fan of the class system, which prevents successful bookings if they don't align to the meta, but I guess you can change everyone to the specialist class to circumvent this. Every wrestler can also earn experience and level up, so good matches are more likely to happen despite not aligning with the correct opponent. If you liked last year's GM mode, there is plenty to enjoy here. Alright, let's get to the bane of the last two games. My faction. Has it improved as well? The shocking answer is yes, it has. It's not there yet, but they made considerable efforts to make it more fun. The most critiqued aspect of the previous offerings has been remedied. That being that certain characters or outfits have been locked within the My Faction mode. This year, there are a few that can be used outside of this mode and into all the other ones, the so-called Persona cards. While the offering as of yet is very slim, it does bode well for future editions, we'll be sure to see. Another welcome change is the Faction Wars portion of the game. No more endless 4-way matches that took way too long to complete, but 5 stages of multiple matches where you can earn superstars to join your team for that run. Upgrades, armor bonuses, health recuperation and credits to be used in Faction Wars on bosses that you have unlocked by beating them at the end of every stage. This all sounds great, but of course, I have some complaining to do. While the setup is nice, after the initial intro run, it quickly loses its appeal. During the intro, there are a lot of 1v1 and 2v2 matches, which is perfectly fine and quite enjoyable to get through, especially since you don't have to worry about performing a set amount of moves or taunts to get points to progress, but instead, just simply focus on winning the match. The problem starts once that intro is done. Almost immediately you get bombarded with the same 4 matches. 2v2s, 2 vs 2, 3 vs 3 and 4 vs 4, with only a few singles matches in between. And since 2K obviously can't help themselves, most of the time they throw you in a ladder match. That's it. No special matches like Cage or Hell in a Cell, no extreme rules or new match types like ambulance or casket matches, only ladders. And since picking up items is still a nightmare in most cases, this made me lose interest in the mode quite quickly. Which is a shame, because for the first time I actually started to enjoy it. There's also the towers mode and the weekly towers to power through, but those are mostly the same. And to get the most cards, you'd really have to be quite good at the game. Or lucky because of the breaker system. Yeah, I'll never let that down. So, my faction is improved, but held back by questionable decisions. And that is it really. Despite my bias against 2K, noticeable work has been put in this year to make it better than it previously was, which was sorely needed. My rise was enjoyable, but had no improvements that stood out, apart from the low production feel. Universe mode is still in need of an overhaul. GM mode is on their way to becoming what it needs to be, and is the most enjoyable of all the modes in my opinion. Which is quite typical because it's the only one where you don't actually play the game. Showcase mode is what it has been for the past few years, a nice distraction but nothing worth coming back to once completed. My faction is a good start towards the right direction, and finally has the potential it was lacking in the previous attempts, if not for completely messing up the faction wars. Now, I'm not an online player myself, as the online portion of the series has been lacking for a very long time, and I've read reports on it still being bad this year. The comment section of their official Instagram posts is littered with requests to fix the online. So, after nearly a decade, it might be time to finally do so. Seeing the special referee match types finally return after a decade is something that was long overdue, and they've done a good job in doing so. Ambulance and casket matches are a nice surprise, and albeit simplistic in nature and unnecessarily difficult to win, it's still a fun addition. The mid-match brawl is fun as well, if a bit slow in its execution. The throwing of weapons is the biggest change this year, and is what makes playing with friends a whole hell of a lot more enjoyable than it was previously. There are a few tweaks and changes that made things overall a lot more fun. Being able to stand on the announcer tables is something that should have been in the game nearly 9 years ago, but good to see return. Face painted damages over the course of the match is a nice touch, as is being able to have double title entrances. Being able to choose different camera angles is great too. For all the new touches and changes, I'd recommend looking on YouTube, as they are far more in-depth and I've spent too much of your time already. Which leaves the final question. What do I score this year's WWE 2K game? While improved significantly in a few areas, there are still many more things that need to be improved and addressed. But it is noticeably better than last year, and even I enjoyed this year's offering, despite hating that damn breaker system. I give it a 7. If you have friends over, you'll have a great time. If you're a solo player, it'll keep you playing for a while as well. Especially since my Rise and GM are enjoyable, and my faction can keep you busy. Despite its shortcomings, it's not where I want the game to be just yet. If after all this you're still unsure as to whether to buy it, it won't be long for the game to be on sale, and it probably is as we speak. But as much as it surprises me to say this, there's hope yet for this series. Let's just hope some new competition is announced soon, so they can keep this trend going and not once again fall into complacency. Thanks for watching. Elbow drop that subscribe button, like the video if you enjoyed it, and tell me down below on what you disagree with. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.
I can't begin to imagine.
Rip supply!
Crashing through the table.
I don't know who got the worst of that, him or the table. Just brutal.
That was painful just to watch.